I'll start the meeting by asking for approval of our last meeting, September 15th. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of September 15th meeting.
I second.
Any discussion?
Second.
No, thank you, Jonathan, as always, for meticulous notes.
Yes. So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good. Next on our agenda is public comment. Any public comments at this time?
Yes. I was on the November town meeting. Is that envisioned as being a vote on the West Cornwall septic?
I'll put that in our agenda so it will become clear.
Well, I just wondered whether that was because if it is, I wanted to make a comment. If it isn't, I don't want to make a comment.
Well, the board hasn't set the town meeting yet, so I think.
Well, all right, then I'll bring it up because I've obviously had some medical issues, able to attend meetings as often as I'd like. But I had brought up several months ago, and the Board of Selectmen seemed receptive at the time about cost estimate for the possible purchase of some of the sites that might be considered. And in reading the minutes, I hadn't seen that anything was done about that. And my particular item, when I brought it up, had to do with the cost of the Farnsworth, because if we're not the estimate, and if USDA is looking at paying 45% of 5 million, that doesn't include the cost of purchasing and those things. So I think that it would be helpful to, if we're going to have a vote, for us to have some of that information available. And I would selectmen to pressure WMC to get some numbers on that so that we could have informed vote when and if it's taken. My other question is, I would like all three of the selectmen to address their thoughts on the letter that appeared in the Lakeville Journal from Carolyn Nestro, because it asked, for boards to take it. I'd like to know how each of our selectmen feel about that letter. Thank you.
Okay, any other thoughts?
Yes, this is Steve Simonin. I'm the chairman of the Cable Advisory Council for Litchfield, for your line. And I've been following what you're doing with your fiber to the home. And I was willing to offer some insight involved in all this if you're interested.
Yes, we're interested. We'd always like to hear more, but right now we have a very busy agenda. And public comment is usually just very brief comments. So again, if you have any detailed comments, it'd be good if you email them to us. If you want to summarize your comments briefly, that's good. But again, we have many things we have to decide as a board or consider tonight. So
in 2 minutes, I can give you some highlights that might be.
Okay, go ahead.
I looked at some of the costs, and it was $50,000 per kilometer for fiber. Well, I've been doing this for many, many years. I designed a lot of even your network up there. I designed the digital transport when it was Cablevision. The one thing that's missing that I see on there is when you have internet, it's point to point from one location to another. If you put a fiber to the home, you have to convert that light to electrical signal. And that cost is not cheap. You need a receiver transmitter. You need a frequency down and a back, which means you need 2 frequencies or 2 fibers.
Oh, sorry.
And you have to bring that back to a node somewhere. Say you have 100 homes. If you're doing 1 gig, you need 100 gig that you're going to have to deal with on a node. That's a lot of bandwidth if you're going to go that high. They take that fiber back to a head end, which has not been identified. That cost that you have is for dark fiber. It's not lit. The expense for that equipment is, and you have to have personnel to maintain it. So there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. And the expense, to find out, Cablevision is now offering business internet at 300 meg for $40 a month. The cost estimate hearing about this was around $80 a month that you were going to be offering this as a government's funded option. More than 200 because you'll never use it all. And I just wanted you to think about that because that's a lot of expense and a lot of doubling up of it where you could actually just change the laws to regulate cable and bring it into your control. That's all I need to tell you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments at this time?
Yeah, Rocco Botto here.
Hello.
Hey, speaking of the interwebs, I'm here at my Bunker Hill virtual office, and this is regarding the Cornwall website upgrade item on the agenda. So on behalf of the Cornwall Committee, I'm excited to announce that over the past 2 years, we've been working to redesign and re-platform the existing cornwallct.org website. We started with the attainable goal of building the best website in the state, and we have continued to make a lot of progress with a projected go live date at the end of the year, which is exciting. Last 20 years, the website has been a fusion between the town and the local community, which is a very Cornwall thing and very unique among other towns in the area. Just a couple other quick notes. In addition, we provided an executive summary of the project ahead of this meeting to the selectman's office, including the scope, the goals, benefits, timing, while also touching on training, demos, feedback, and those things as well. So we ask for your support in this key project in these increasingly digital times that we live in. We feel that the new site is really going to help move the town's digital presence forward on several key fronts. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. And that will be currently addressed under item 6 on our agenda.
Yep.
Any other public comments? Okay, thank you. Addition to the agenda, are there any other, let's see, I have 2 additions to the agenda. West Cornwall septic schedule is 1, and then B is Allen Cemetery.
Sorry, I had one more addition to the public comment. I don't think you heard me. Did you already start with the meeting?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, I don't think you heard. So I just wanted to know, I just had a quick thing, if you could, it's not a real long comment, it's just whether you could, if you're going to be addressing something, or if you could address something during the fiber optic part of the, it's whether, if you could address that issue about whether the committee, I'd really like to talk more about whether the committee, the Internet Committee in Cornwall, and how private kind of group you called it, and they haven't been acting as a private group in that they've been reporting in, they've been reporting to Economic Development Commission. They attended that meeting as a Cornwall entity, and they submitted a report, I believe, to the Board of Selectmen and the Cornwall Conservation Commission. Up to get that. I think it's great if it's a private group, because they're also doing a lot of things that if they are an official committee wouldn't be. They're kind of acting as a private group, and I can get into that at some other point. But so I think I would propose that we kind of really clarify to the town residents that they are acting as kind of individuals as a part of group or club, and that they're not representing the town of Cornwall in any way. And I would love to hear that during the meeting.
Okay, we have item 8, connectivity and fiber optics on the schedule. Okay, so that's the end of the comment period. Back to the motion to add 2 things to the agenda, West Cornwall sewer septic schedule and Allen cemeteries. Is second that motion?
I second.
Any other additions? All All those discussion. All those in favor of adding those two things? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes, and we'll add the Cornwall sewer septic schedule enters into item 2, which is November town meeting. So first item is the COVID-19 virus update. Again, item 1 on our agenda. It's a problem that has not gone away. Rates are beginning to spike in certain in Connecticut and in New York City. So that again, we're taking some very prudent. And 2 things we are doing is coordinating with the Visiting Nurse Association to have flu clinics. We urge everyone to get a flu shot. The health people do not want a double epidemic going on if it's all possible. So the senior flu clinic is on Friday, the 16th of October, and there's information in the Chronicle about how to sign up for that. We're also setting up a flu clinic for our first responders and town employees to make that easier for people to make sure they get their flu shots, and people are urged to get one in mid-October. What else? Our emergency work group continues to meet on this. We're going ahead with our voting in the national election at the school. The school is still and doing well to meet the challenges of education under COVID constraints. One other thing, I think it's probably a good thing, as people will be spending more in time for us as a board to have a policy that if anyone is in a town building, and most of the buildings are restricted to employees, but there can be several employees at once in a room, that the people that are in more than one, if there's more than one person in the room, people should wear a mask. It seems obvious, it seems repetitive. I think it would be good to have a townwide policy to require that in town buildings, because we do not want anyone to get sick in Cornwall, and we do not want to be where this is spread. And I think we have to be proactive, as there's still some confusion at the federal level. We have to be proactive at the local level to do whatever we can to protect our residents and our employees. So I would make that motion that in town buildings, if there's more than one person in a workspace, then masks are required for the people in that room. Is there a second to that motion?
I second that motion.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Great. So now one of the of today's meeting is to wrestle with the town meeting under COVID. I've spent a bunch of time since our last meeting talking to town council Pearlie Grimes, as well as bond counsel for the town, and trying to get a handle on how do we make decisions under our constraints of doing things as safely as possible. The basic news is that even with the orders, where we operated last spring, and the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance by committee vote adopted the town budget. The ability to not have a vote in person town meeting was limited only to those budgetary matters. So we asked, we know we have to have an annual town meeting at the last quarter of the year to cover our 5-year capital plan and review our annual report. And so the 5-year capital plan does require a vote. So it's the consensus of our town council that we have to have an in-person meeting, and that's likely to be required to be outside due to the constraints of our bill size and social restrictions. So the thought is that we would have that meeting outside probably, and I got to talk to the health district about this, and we don't have to make a decision tonight, but I'd like to adopt a schedule if we can of how we go for the next couple of months, making decisions in the town. So there's one set, there's that town meeting that happened in the last quarter to cover those two topics. The other larger issue that we have been wrestling with for several years is the West Cornwall sewer septic issue. We now have a tentative number from the USDA as far as how much the bonds are required or how much funding we can get from USDA. The number of 45% has been suggested, and I have talked to bond counsel about proceeding with a vote on that. Again, we come up against how do you make a decision in this situation. From the start, as we're talking $4.9 million, that's a major issue. And we have said from the start, have a referendum on this, which is different from an in-person town meeting where, because you can have a machine vote and you can also have absentee ballots. Now the absentee ballots are done under different state statutes than ballots for the national or local absentee. So we're working through those requirements, but they will be available after a town meeting. Referendum is the vote would happen 2 weeks after the town meeting itself. So what would happen would be the selectmen would sign off on the call with the Board of Finance for a town meeting to approve or to vote on appropriating that money for that purpose. And we would sign off on that in the call, say we'd have a town meeting on a certain date, and then we would adjourn to a referendum that would be held. Machines would be open for voting 2 weeks after the date of the meeting, which again, according to our advisors, would have to be in person outside. There would be no vote on the sewer thing taken at that town meeting, but it could be an informational meeting. So, are you with me so far, Selectman? And again, this is a little complicated. It's pretty much set by statute and legal advice. Any questions so far on that procedure?
No.
So we have two things. And again, as it would have to be a town meeting outside, if we're going to have something like that, it'd probably better do that sooner rather than later. Again, because there'd be no vote at that meeting, people would not have a decision then, but they would have the ability to have an absentee vote and as well as go directly to the school to vote again on this particular issue. So that's important. It's also important to know early on, as we know from our last vote on this issue, that people that are not enrolled voters here also can vote on this issue if they're U.S. citizens, provide proof of citizenship, and are taxpayers to a certain level of assessment, which is fairly low. I think you have to have like $1,000 of taxable property, then you can vote even if you're not an enrolled voter. So again, it's somewhat different, probably a large list. Everybody's on the voting list. It's going to, hopefully everybody's going to vote in November. It's going to add to that group people that own property here can also vote. So what we're thinking about also is, because it's going to take pretty stout New England people to go out to a town outside during November, the thought is to have a informational meeting ahead of that. It'd be a virtual meeting, as well as get information out in the Chronicle, get a 1 or 2 page flyer talking about the vote, talking about funding sources, talking about some tax implications. So get information out in the November Chronicle. We can have an informational meeting on the 13th of November, which is a Friday night, and then have a town meeting outside on the 21st, which is a Saturday afternoon. We can have it at Footfield or on the town green. I would think Footfield, because we have the pavilion, so we all can be on there, some of us can be on the pavilion. And then a referendum would follow in 2 weeks, which would be on Saturday, December 5th. Now these are all new dates and we don't have to decide on them tonight, but I wanted to put those out there.
Sorry, what would be the tentative meeting of the date of the meeting?
Yeah, I can go over these again. So we'd have an informational meeting on the 13th. That would be a Zoom informational meeting where the presenters, the engineers, the committee could be there, selectmen could be there, board of finance could be there. That would be on the 13th. So there'd be a virtual information meeting on November 13th at night. Then we would have a town meeting. It would be more or less it would be discussion only agenda, because the vote has already been assigned to happen 2 weeks later on December 5th. So that would be an item. The Cornwall Sewer Septic would be discussion item on a town meeting. People would get there. There'd be no vote outside on the 21st. There'd be a referendum on December 5th, which is a Saturday. So both of those will be Saturday events. Okay, so that's a timeline that I think is workable. We have constraints there, and that, unlike some other things, we have to have this vote within 2 weeks of the town meeting. So there is that constraint, and then we're also up against winter weather. We're also pushing up against, we can't vote virtually. We can't have a meeting like we're having tonight and everybody raise their hand. It has not been permitted under state law as a response to COVID. So we're up against that. And if we go, it's probably better to do this early winter than, say, try to pull something like this off in January. March might be more difficult. Although, again, it's up to the collective judgment of this board of whether to do this at this pace, or it could be done in January, it could be done in April. But again, we've sort of been working at this for some time. We have been looking, I think the plans are out there. I think we had a good information session last summer. It's my overall feeling people generally know whether they want to commit this amount of money to this project in West Cornwall or not. The numbers, as far as the reimbursement, is about what we thought it would be. Again, another little thing to consider, we would lock ourselves into these numbers if, for whatever reason, because again, that money we're relying on, the grant hasn't been appropriated yet by Congress, but this is the best estimate of people from USDA, and also we were from our bond council. This is all fairly routine, but again, these are our best estimates. If all of a sudden we put it out to bid, and it's a $6 million project, and we're back to going to another town meeting, we can't approve something that's more expensive than this. And if we don't get a grant for the amount we estimate, then we would have to, again, we're not authorized to proceed. So we have to sort of nail those numbers down and give people a good estimate of what we feel is accurate and doable. Again, conversations with the bond council. It's important to note that the town cannot just go out and go to the drive-up window of the National Iron Bank and say, I want to borrow $6 million. We have, if we bond money, there's a legal process which we have to follow. We also have to go through we have to hire what's called a bond counsel. And we have the current bond counsel has worked with the town and many municipalities for a long time. I believe he was involved with the 1989 school edition. He also language for our bond to do the bridges. And his role is to make sure that, among other things, we protect the bond holders, that we protect creditors. And so he's going to be the one that really finally signs off on our town meeting calls and advises us how to do this legally. We do not want to do something that he does not approve and is not proper, because it's a pretty serious event when you go and start borrowing money correctly. So he will probably be available at some point with a joint Zoom meeting with the Board of Finance if anybody has particular questions about bondations or things. He's very experienced, has probably over 30 years in the business. He did say that we are at a point with these numbers that it is possible to go ahead and get a town on the issue at this point. We do not have all the information figured out at this point as far as or all the permitting or all the design done, because the town hasn't shown that it wants to do the project yet. It's my thinking that those things will come, but the next step is, does the town really want to do this project? If the town does, when the town does get a site to put its facility, whether that's a lease, whether that's a purchase, we would have to then go back to planning and zoning for permission and to the town meeting, because the town would then be acquiring property. But again, that's another whole set of meetings. And until we know the town wants to do the whole project, it seemed to me this would be the next obvious first step. And again, if we take the step, then the USDA would do a much more thorough review of our process. One thing the bond council did say was that we have to get what's called an 824 referral for the project, which means we go to the planning and zoning and make sure it's consistent with the town plan of conservation and development. And as this project has been mentioned and promoted in the last, not just the plan that was adopted last fall, but also the previous plan in 2010, I don't think problem, but I've asked Karen to put the town on the Planning and Zoning Commission agenda for an 824 referral, which we have to, when the town buys or sells property, we have to get the blessing of the Planning and Zoning Commission and a finding that it is consistent with the goals of the town plan. So that's another procedural step. We also have to get the vote, an affirmative vote from the Board of Finance that they feel this is something the town should and the town could afford. So this will also be on their docket for their upcoming meetings. It's been heavily discussed already by the Board of Finance leading up to our work last summer. So again, I don't think that's going to be a huge leap for them to make a determination on that. So that's what I'd like to propose. Again, we're going to try to get something, an insert into the Chronicle. The study group's going to meet next Tuesday, and that's, you know, a pretty ambitious schedule, but I think it makes sense. At this point, But again, it's up to the board to feel whether they, they want to do it at this time or you put it off till spring. That's sort of where we're at. And I mean, it's a bunch to think about, but I'd be in favor of doing it as, the information there for a long time. Certainly the need has been demonstrated. West Cornwall hasn't gotten any better as far as being able to do things with some of those buildings. In the meantime,
So what is the monetary amount wherein that town vote then becomes, is not valid anymore? So let's say it's not the 4.9 or whatever it
we
is.
go over, we can only spend what the town meeting says. So if we,
Okay, so by the dollar, $1 over. we can do
it's a
it.
dollar amount. So if we say we 1.9 million, and there is contingency, according to Steve, and I talked to Steve and Todd a little bit today about setting up agenda for the meeting. He said that he's confident, Steve's confident that the project can be done for that amount. You may find the paving is less and the site may cost you more, but he said there's contingency in that plan to, run what he feels
Right.
figures were. So
But the funding is not confirmed. They said they couldn't, 45% was a number that they couldn't guarantee. So if that number drops, how does that affect the town vote?
right,
Same
again,
thing.
that's a really good question. And again, that wording and those concerns will be addressed by the bond council in his of the vote. So again, there is going to be some reference to expected reimbursement, and he'll have guidance on what the trigger is. They feel they can get us 40%, but I'm not going to say, should we say we would, I don't think they're going to give us, I'd like to have him push USDA for a minimum grant, but I'm not sure they're going to give us a minimum grant at this point. But this board can say, if we make a presentation and say we're going to get 40% and it comes in at 20, we feel the project will have to go back to the town for another vote or whatever else happens. I believe we have the authority to do that, and I think that's one of the questions that we will have to answer with his guidance.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the calendar right now. So the next time we could vote on this would be the 20th.
Yeah.
After the West Cornwall Septic Committee meets.
Correct.
But we could still get things together for an insert in the Chronicle just in case.
I talked to Steve and he felt he's already done a summary of the project, and I've talked to Vera and the registrars about the voting aspects, so we can get something about that. And I'd also like to have, visuals or something. So I think all that's doable by the 20th. And again, we reserve room for an insert.
Yeah, I'd like to see all of that information before I vote on that.
Definitely show you drafts.
Sorry?
Week. We can show you drafts next week.
Okay, thank you.
So anyway, I guess the other question is, should we, which we don't have to answer, and again, we may find there's something out there that we haven't considered at this point. The thing you should know is we live in turbulent times. Somebody said, what happens if the pandemic blows up, or what happens if we have a huge blizzard? The selectmen can remove any item from a town meeting call within 5 days of a town meeting. So we do have the authority if things become really more turbulent than they are now, or incredibly turbulent to the point we feel it's not fair to have a vote in. Particularly, I've never seen us do that, but we do have the ability to remove an item from a call from a town meeting within 5 days of that town meeting. So there's that little safety mechanism also.
Okay.
Any other questions? Priscilla, what do you think? You've been at every meeting for the last 4 years on this. Any thoughts? I mean,
I think it's a work in progress. I think Marina's questions are valid. My personal preference is that we move forward this fall with a town meeting rather than putting it off till spring. And we can get any additional information that we need in time for our meeting on the 20th of this month. I would say let's try to do it this fall.
okay. Good, I agree. We're 2 months away from a vote. It's a fairly familiar issue. The engineering report is already up on the website. It's going to be, you know, the main part of the presentation. And we'll get something done on the financial acts fairly quickly. So again, we'll try to get you as much information as soon as we get it.
Thank you.
Marina. And the main thing is green light, red light, caution light, I suppose. My thought is we have time to but to me, this seems like the most logical calendar to adopt for this fall.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm being asked without some of the information, so that's why I'm saying flashing light. I'd like to do it in the fall, but I'd like to see all the information.
Got it. Okay. So let's see. So that's, I think we've covered 820 referral from planning and zoning. That's not controversial. We'll go ahead with that. The study group will meet virtually Tuesday, and John will set that meeting up, and we'll put that on the website so people know how to join that meeting. And we'll continue to get advice from our councils and try to get more information from USDA and the councils as far as what's the best way to word this so it's clear. Okay, so that's our, and so then to go back to where we started, then we have these two other little issues. We town report, and we also do adopt the 5-year capital plan, which generally is a fairly lightly attended town meeting. Again, because we vote on the capital plan, we don't vote to adopt the annual report because that's done by the auditor and there's nothing the town meeting can't change. So, but there is a vote required to adopt the 5-year capital plan. So we'd have to do that on side. So to our election people, we felt it's better to put this all on, add these two items to the November 21st town meeting. So we'd have the town, this is called the annual town meeting. We review the annual report which Barbara's putting together with the auditor and all the committee reports. We review and adopt a capital plan, which again is just a planning document. It's not a budgetary document. And then we go into follow-up discussion on this Cornwall sewer issue. And this would be 8 days following the virtual meeting. So we'd have a chance if people have things that we didn't have answers to, we can give updated answers to those questions. It also gives our election people time to recover from the night election and get a new set of absentee ballots ready to go out to voters. So again, we had, the other thought was we'd have a separate town meeting, like on the 14th, but the consensus was it's better to have a slightly bit longer town meeting than have 2 town meetings in November. I think that's asking a lot.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think it's all possible. And again, we're going to do it at 2 o'clock in the, so my thought is this town meeting would happen on the 21st at 2 o'clock at Foot Fields, because there's a pavilion there. We can be, and again, I got to up the thinking on that and see what the board, see what the Torrent Area Health District says about that, as far as going that's the best spot. So anyway, we'll have that, the more precise date and location. Okay. So that's our current thing. We have, so to get through item 2, we're tentatively looking at a town meeting on the 21st of November, which would have three items on the call: view of the town annual report, have the 5-year capital plan, and it would have continued discussion of the West Cornwall wastewater system, which would adjourn for a vote. No vote at that town meeting on West Cornwall, but that would happen too long. Okay, so any other comments on November town meetings?
No.
Okay, stay tuned. So then we have our 5-year plan. I believe I sent out to you the last year's plan as well as an updated plan here. This covers our capital projects, more or less our routine ones like upgrading projects at the school, fire trucks, highway equipment, some bridge work, revaluation. It does not cover a big project like the West Cornwall sewer project, because that's going to be covered by a whole separate town meeting process. In the same way, our bonding for the bridges doesn't occur on here. So I've gone over this with the highway department. We've mentioned it at the fire department, and I think Jim's biggest change to this from the previous year was guardrails on Dibble Hill. There's a section off Route 128 or off Route 125 that has the old cable guardrails, and they have deteriorated, and there's a big drop off there. And as we know, we have to provide a good system of that. So he feels they should be replaced. He also added some guardrails up on Wickham Hill in a gap of, we have quite a bit of metal beam rail up there already, but there's some spots where he feels significant drop off in the roads. So are there any thoughts, reflections on this capital plan?
Seems pretty complete and well thought out to me.
Good. There's going to be, as we've mentioned before, there is some bridge work that's going to happen next year, but because that's paid by the bond, that would not be included in this, but those would finish up the 4 maintenance works on small bridges that we have to finish up on our bonded work. So the step is that we approve this and then we send it off to the Board of Finance. And again, this is not obligate the town's money, but come budget time, it chooses a framework to look out there. And again, we try to balance these expenditures out so we don't have a lot of peaks in our capital spending. So I make a motion that we adopt this and send it to the Board of Finance and eventually to our town meeting.
I second that.
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I also thought it was a good time to look at where our capital projects are, and sent you a copy, I believe, of all the money that's in balances of things that we have for some projects, most of which are have been started or are multi-year projects. And again, we don't have to approve this. We don't have to choose. This gets adjusted during our budget season as we add more money to this. and we have ongoing projects right now. The roof is being installed on the salt sand storage shed at the highway garage, and there's a tank sitting outside the town office. So those two building projects are underway. So again, and we're looking at probably line to get our new highway truck before the snow flies, hopefully. So that's again another example of something that's on here whose numbers will change as those projects happen. So anyway, that's just, you can look at that. If there's any questions, Barbara and I can answer questions about that. Anything else on capital projects? And again, we'll dig into this again first part of January, where we start our budget for the coming year. Housing planning upgrade, housing planning grant update. We have some paperwork, all this paperwork to finish off. This is the agreement to execute the fee for service agreement, which would enable us to hire the Council of Governments to help us with the housing plan grant that we got. So basically the town applied for a housing grant to help us look at different housing options for the town and plan for that. And the Council of Governments is providing us with the staff, approximately the same amount as the grant that would help us get this. And this grant is required by state statute. So this would help us with the ongoing issue of more affordable housing in town and what's the best way to do it. So, so anyway, is there a motion to sign? I think what we need is a motion to authorize me to sign off on this fee for service agreement. And again, this is basically hiring the Council of Governments. Janelle Mullen, who has been working on our town plan, would be the point person on this to help us get this planning session going.
I would move that you sign this and we should move forward with the housing plan.
Yeah, I second.
Any discussion?
No.
Okay. Unanimous. Okay, so without further ado, I will sign it. And so consider that done, and John will file it with the people. Next on our agenda is, yes, the Cornwall website upgrade. We did get 2 letters from Louise Riley, our good friend, who is chair of the Cornwall CT.org Town Community Web Committee. First thing was she was a discussion of what they had done and the amount of hours that Rocco Votto has put in to bring this into development. She did suggest the town pay Rocco a fraction of the time he's put in. She estimated that he's put in about $30,000 worth of effort or time into this, and the town paying him $3,000. My only concern about that is that we do not have, this is not a budgeted item in the town budget. There is no line for the website, so that we don't have like a checkbook that we can instantly do things or sign. However, we do have a town endowment, which we have used from time to time at the discretion of the town board of selectmen, that could do some of this. I did talk to Rocco, and he said the payment is quite secondary to him at this point, but I do appreciate his efforts. Having looked at the new potential site, we did get also a letter from Louise upon request that does summarize for the board the background, the project summary, the goals, the scope, the new features, feedback, and training and demos and timing to get the new site launched by the new year. And also the offers out there for their committee, Rocco, to present this, do a formal presentation to the board at our earliest convenience, which I would like to see happen next or at some point in our meeting. And again, we have a lot on our plate, but I think this is really important. And I was, I'm not, yeah, I won't say I'm not a huge tech person, but I was very impressed by the format, by the look and the ease on which the new platform would work, even to a lay person. I think presenting Cornwall in a very positive, inviting web page is really important, especially 2020 going into 2021, for a whole variety of reasons. This board has, acknowledged the importance of communication between the town and its citizens is vital, as well as how it presents itself to the outside world. And I mean, I think the town has been refreshed by new people coming to town. We're also in need of refreshment. And I think we have, I think it's been a very exciting year and challenging year in a lot of ways, but I think there's new energy in town. And some of that is, by the way it presents itself, has presented itself. I know the Economic Development Commission has their own site that has encouraged people to come here. And I think this sort of takes it up to the next level, as far as I understand. I think also this committee is a pretty good cross-section of people in town that are have the town's interest in mind, volunteer a lot of time to try to keep the town sort of, I'd say this is one of the things that sort of holds the town together, weaves us together is a website that, where there's information, there's a lot of things historically has been on there. I've always been a big backer personally of the website, even though it hasn't been the official town website. When I compare it to other town websites, which basically just has when offices are open or when events are happening, ours has such a depth to it. And has a very unique sort of homegrown feel to it. Yet it transmits a very clear picture of the town, and I think it's very important that we allow that to continue and encourage that. And again, I'm not an expert, but I would be all in favor of supporting this and having a presentation at our next meeting. What do you say, board? Did you get all the links and everything? And one of the things we're constrained by is we don't chat between meetings. So we send stuff out, get information, and I think most of it goes out, but we don't say, hey, did you get that one? What do you think between meetings? So that's just the way we have to do business here at officials. So this is sort of our first time talking about this. So did you all get this stuff? Did you look at the links? What do you think?
Yeah, I saw it a while ago. It's really impressive and it's great. I'm a little bit more conservative about official websites versus non-official websites, which I've spoken about before. I have to say Rocco really poured in heart and soul and creativity, and it's leaps and bounds. I won't say better, but it's definitely an upgrade. Not to say that the existing one is bad, but are we going to talk about using Udemy tonight or after we get a presentation?
I just thought this would be our intro
Okay.
issue, and again, sort of suggest, I mean, I talked to people about it a little bit, but this is the first time we first gotten, you know, specifically a monitor request and also, you know, an invitation to get a presentation. So again, you know, in my mind, before the next obvious step is to learn more and get a presentation, a bit of.
All right, I'm all for that.
Part of the thing too is, I believe it's been pitched as, you know, more, it's easier to access for the various people, like say Jonathan wants to post things. I'll have to give his own testimony on that, but it'll be easier in some ways for the people to contribute to it to contribute, which I think is really important to me. You know, there's a fine line too, because it's, you know, again, we're going to have to sort of balance, does this make this the, you know, again, does this make this an official website, and what is that? There are some implications. Is this the official website, and who decides this is the official website? Does the committee want to be the official website? Does the selectmen want this to be the official website? And what are the requirements for the state of an official website? We've been flying underneath the radar for some FOI stuff. We're pretty we're good on posting and things, but and we try to get everything out. If it becomes official, then it's official. So we probably, again, we have all, you know, committees, and we're going to get into that a little bit. And official committees have to have minutes, notices, and things posted a little more carefully, and we're pretty good on that. But as far as the boards, but when we start going off to committees and subcommittees, it gets a little bit out there. So again, I'll probably get, one of the things I'm going to try to do is run this past my friends at the Freedom of Information Commission in Hartford and see what their take is on it, and is this really an issue, or, and again, we'll ask Rocco if he's still with us or if he's not with us, to get some feedback from the committee as far as, do they feel this is now, if the town contributes money to this, and it's going to be an annual amount. Certain other towns pay thousands of dollars, you know, several thousand, not tens of thousands, but I suppose it depends on the size of your city or town. But other towns do pay, you know, public money to maintain the service. And is this going to be an ongoing service, or, you know, that's as much a concern as any money right now. But again, I think where things are at in 2020, I mean, we need to have a really good, solid site. So, you know, I don't think we're talking huge expenditures at this point.
No, we're very lucky.
We're getting, and we're still getting 95%. We're still going to be volunteers. So,
yeah.
So anyway, any other thoughts on this? So we're heading towards a presentation next meeting. Again, we may not have that at the start of the meeting. We may have it, you know, midway or something, because we've got to stay focused on our town meetings and stuff and get that all hammered out, do our business, and then have a presentation, you know, partway through the meeting next time. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay, Priscilla on board? Good. Okay, so that's our website. Next appointment, Peter Demme. Again, we have a vacancy as full member of Inland Wetlands Commission, and it's been recommended to us that we appoint Peter Demme as a full member. He's currently an alternate and very valuable committee member. So I would make a motion that we move Peter up to the full membership. The pay is about the same as being an alternate, but I think he's earned his time to move on up to full membership of the Inland Wetlands Committee. So is there a second to that motion to move Peter up? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Item 8 is connectivity, fiber optics. again, this has been an issue in the town for quite a while. There is a group that is studying this, and I believe they're drafting a report for the town. This is not a town uh, authorized study or whatever. Uh, it is a group of citizens who are invited to participate in the study of what the town's some of the best connectivity options are for the town. So we also did receive communications that the town appoint a group to study this issue. I thought at the current time would be to request the committee let us know when we're getting their report before we appoint another group. I'd like to hear what that report has to say. I also remain open-minded on the issue. There's a lot of aspects to this. Appreciate the input from the gentleman earlier from the Cable Advisory Committee and some conversations with Optimum pointed out the need for some sort of survey of service in the town. So again, there's work to be done, and I know there are some regional efforts underway that we continue to monitor. And we also have we also got some news this week. We've been writing the siting council about what the status is for the Popple Swamp Tower. There's a tower built, it's almost a decade old off Popple Swamp Road, but did not have any antennas put on it. So there is move, I believe, by Verizon to energize the tower within a year's time of receiving this extension. So we contact the siting council. They sent us to some attorneys, and they're going to try to get us a more precise schedule. Because I think with this last storm and outage, it's pretty clear that connectivity is not. I mean, it's becoming a very important central issue of the town from an emergency management standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from an education standpoint, and we need to have redundant, reliable systems. Systems go down, there's a lot of that creates a lot of problems. So again, we're going to probably pursue a couple different avenues and encourage more practical connectivity less as we go forward. Any thoughts on the issue from the board?
I mean, I think we're still very early. I mean, I think there are different avenues to pursue research on connectivity and fiber. And I'm open to hearing from all paths and avenues. I think we need to get all the information and take it slow. And that's sort of where I am right now. I'm gathering information, I'm reading. That's the best that I can do right now. And I don't think anything is, set in stone in any way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've talked to some people who relocated businesses up here to see what their experiences have for, internet coverage and, service. So, and general satisfaction at the current until it goes out. But, so I think there's going to be a variety of needs and experience there. But I'm with you. I think, Marina, I think there's going to be a lot of there could be some competing plans there, some competing strategies.
Which is good. I mean, that's what you want. Yeah. you want different strategies so that people start to guys because they want their strategy to win. So I think it's great, and I think just keeping ears open.
Yes. Priscilla, any thoughts on all this?
I think we're still in the 19th century. Um, I agree with Marina that we need to know more about costs. The gentleman, Stephen Simonin, who spoke earlier, I raised a couple of important points about what things would cost. But when I have my other hat on and I'm showing real estate, everybody I work with from the metropolitan area no longer has a landline. And I'll pull up to a property and they'll pull out a cell phone and they'll say, I can't get reception here. And I will say, well, once you are in the house and you have internet capability, then you'll get your cell phone service from your TV operator. You know, that doesn't set well with a lot of our metropolitan newcomers. But I agree with Marina. We have to be very, very concerned about what things are going to cost. But I do we could move a little more quickly in this direction.
Well, I think I think traction is starting right now. I just feel like, you know, there's some that are concerned that we're not taking the correct path or the region's not taking the correct path. And I just feel like a little premature to say that. And I think also like a regional effort will only inspire the current cable companies start moving. And so I don't think anything's off the table right now.
Right. Do you agree with the idea of requesting the committee at least tell us how long it will take to get a report? Or
Yeah, I think that's great.
they were looking to see it whenever they come up with it. Okay, so
Good.
I will put something out on our behalf to the asking what the time schedule is for their report. Okay, so anyway, we will keep our eyes, you know, this isn't, we will keep this as an agenda item going forward. Next is utility accountability. The legislature did meet in special session last week and I think the week before, and I was very glad to see in this time political acrimony they accomplished things, and they actually did things that were bipartisan and unanimous between two parties. It's almost like that's good, you know. So anyway, one of the things they accomplished was increased utility accountability in the form of a bill, take back the grid bill, and there's quite a few aspects to that, but basically it would increase the performance standards on our public utilities and public back into the public utilities in some ways with performance standards, and also focus on two things that we have been particularly interested in, and those are their Make Safe programs, that when a storm hits, they send out representatives, or even before a storm hits, if it's forecast properly, to coordinate with the town as far as its recovery efforts, and we don't have the 4 days plus of no show. So that's one thing. The second thing is to work with set up a viable municipal liaison program, so we have some idea of what they're doing and when they're going to do it. So again, this is something that's ongoing, and the Public Utility Regulatory Agency gave them till next week to meet with all 146 towns. So I've suggested to our contact person that I meet, maybe Diane Beebe, maybe Fred from the fire department and Jim from Public Works, who's ever available, have a meeting with them, again, to reestablish what we feel they could do. A basic thought is we'd like just one truck to come out here to start to let us know when things are safe so we can open things up, and to get a real line of communication with their emergency centers so we can help direct things so they go to where the resources go to where they do the most good, as opposed to going down side streets in places where they aren't needed as much in a storm time. So again, a lot of people are critical of the state government, but I was glad to see there was real cooperation and addressed sooner rather than later. As we go into the winter season, we need this reform urgently. So that should happen, and I'll give you a report back at our next meeting about what's coming out of all this. So again, this is a very important initiative. Next on our agenda is tax refunds. We have two, and we have an abatement request. And again, so I would make a motion. Did you get a copy of these tax requests? There's one for $5.28. There's another one for $236. Refund. I make a motion to pass those two.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. We've also gotten requests from the tax collector for an abatement request, which we get from time from people that cannot afford to pay their property tax because their income, in this case, due to a death in the family, the survivor is not able to pay, has very little income, is not able to pay their property. So I will do some research on this and bring this up in an executive session at a later time due to the sensitivity of the issue. But again, the board is empowered under general statute to abate taxes for people if they're unable to pay their taxes, and we have some income tax form that certainly show that to be the case. So again, we'll take that up maybe at our next meeting under executive session when I get a little more information on it. Okay?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So then that brings us down to the Allen Cemetery. We have started some work at the Allen Cemetery, clearing some of the logs, and we hope to continue that and reinstall a fence up the next couple of weeks. But Jim has begun to reopen the road there and get some logs out of there. So that is, again, a fall project. Any thoughts on that? No complaints from the neighbors on that. We have Cogswell Road Bridge. Couple things on that. I did we continue to hear some comments on this. I did hear some comments of people saying that they are content with the bridge as it is now and would not be in favor of spending any more money to change it in any way. I've heard of other people suggesting changes. At our last meeting, the question was raised, do we need the second rail, the top rail on the bridge? So in my communications with Steve McDonald, who's the engineer for the sewer initiative, who's also done a lot of bridges and highway work, I did ask him for a second opinion on some of our issues concerning that bridge, as far as painting and whether we needed a second rail. His thought was that that probably the railing as it sits now is compliant. The railing, if it was on a state highway, would have somewhat of a different configuration, but as on a local road, probably one set of BL would be sufficient, especially as it's raised up when it crosses the bridge. So he felt we had some options as far as top rail, reducing it in scope with some sort of either, fairly modest metal railing to keep people from falling over the bridge, or wooden rail or something on the top. I also broached the question of painting the beam rail. He said there are towns that do paint beam rail. It becomes a maintenance issue at some point because paint doesn't have to stay on there and you have to repaint it after a period of time. It's possible to paint even galvanized railing. He said also it gets to be expensive if you start painting all your beam rail. So if you do it one place, you have to do it other places. But I think those are all things that could be looked at, pursued. We probably get everybody to agree on everything, but it seems like we have some flexibility on design on those points. So that's my little homework for the session on this. Any other comments from the board on those ideas? We said we're going to have another bunch of work on bridges next spring, so we have time to figure out, want to do some modifications there and make that part of our work package, or put it as an additional option out there when we go out to bid on the work we are proposed for next construction season.
Okay, that's helpful.
Okay. Any thoughts, Priscilla?
I just think we need, possibly, depending on which bridges we're talking about, to involve the neighborhood before we finalize, so that if it is in a B place, that maybe we could do something a little more attractive.
Correct. And I have, again, as I said, I have heard from neighbors of in Fort Hill and Cream Hill, Cogswell area that, again, there's a variety of opinions. So, but anyway, we have time. We have someone there. And,
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can hear feedback, so it's
I'm sure
good.
we hear feedback.
Yeah, so it's good.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. That goes through our additions, and we're back to public comment. And I apologize for everybody who's been sitting there waiting to hear their issue or whatever, but I said we have a lot of things around. So, yeah, just raise your hand and you can.
Joanne?
I was glad to hear about the intended support for the website. But just one thing that I think should be clarified, if I remember, I know it was a long time ago. I remember Steve Senzer, there was something about nobody from the website committee will be paid. I think if that's still in there, they ought to get that clarified before we give them any money. And I do think it raises Marina's point to something that's really got to be decided. I mean, if almost every other town in Connecticut can manage to comply with the requirements, however limited they are, for an official website, I'm sure we can too. And I think that both those issues should be addressed. I also think when you said you can't just open a checkbook and throw money around, I think that the board would be well taken to think back on how quickly they opened the check and threw, what, $10,000 at our employees who have done a wonderful job in town, but who were paid to do their, and then money was thrown at volunteers who had volunteered their time. That money was found instantly with apparently no consultation with the other two before it was brought up at the meeting. And I can't imagine how difficult it would have been for them to express any reservations about something for which we're all very appreciative. But when you spend money like that, you don't have it for other things. And I think we ought to keep that in mind. The other thing is, I'm thrilled to see the town do support for the Allen Cemetery. You may remember we did a a seminar on the 10 cemeteries in Cornwall. I'd like to bring to the attention of the board and ask perhaps for some help. Someone backed into the fence at the Calhoun Cemetery along Route 7 and did over $4,000 worth of damage. I know it's hard to believe, but we had that restoration work completed. And that little cemetery where one of the aide-de-camps to General Washington is buried, I mean, it's a cemetery that actually brings people to our town to do Civil War research. There are also some Black who served in the Revolutionary War buried there. So it is of historical importance. And we don't have a lot of money at that cemetery. And I would ask the board to consider maybe some support for the Calhoun Cemetery to help with restoration. The traffic along Route 7 it's just like a speedway there, and it's caused tremendous damage to the monuments in the front part of the cemetery, which is the oldest part of the cemetery. And we have a tremendous number of monuments that are on the ground and need to be not just cleaned and restored, they need to be put up again. And I would ask the board to tell us how we could approach you and ask you for support for that little cemetery that's an important and very visible part of the Cornwall town. Finally, on the West Cornwall septic, you know, this septic committee hasn't met since we've sat around for 5 months during all the nicer weather, and now there's this rush to have this decision. I would want to know what decisions would have to be on hold if you didn't do it till April of next year. And I also was very disturbed to read in some of the material that USDA was very impressed with the submission that was done by our engineering firm. In fact, they said in their correspondence that it looked cut and paste job. That's pretty embarrassing. And I also think that it's a real concern. I mean, I think all of us would love to see a septic system in West Cornwall, but when the numbers start looking like the 45 homeowners might be impacted by this, would be looking at an ongoing fee of more than $180 a month. $180 a month. That doesn't include $3,500 hookup fee, nor does it include $110,000 in yearly O&M. That rushing this at anything that's going to be held in the cold is not a good idea. So I would want to know, Gordon, exactly what is it that couldn't be. I mean, we could hire bond counsel, it seems to me, between now and April, but why do we have to rush a vote? I think there needs to be I mean, as you said, it doesn't include the cost of the property. It doesn't include a lot of other things that the grant doesn't pay for. And we won't have numbers by the dates that you're looking at. And I just don't understand, when we've sat on this since May and the West Cornwall Septic Committee hasn't met since then, why we have to rush it now. It really concerns me. Thank you for the opportunity to bring these issues to your attention.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we'll have a thorough discussion on Tuesday. Other public comments?
John Coffin.
Yes, John.
And some of these other issues are major issues. I have a small aesthetic issue. The bridge at Cogswell Road, which was a historic, very important looking 1935 bridge, destroyed, and we put up a monstrosity. And I would like to think that we do something to ameliorate the ugliness of the current monstrosity.
Okay.
Doesn't fit the town at all. This is not a Highway 4 or something.
Okay. Any other public comments?
Hi, Gordon. This is Toby Corneo.
Yeah.
I had a question about the affordable housing grant that you mentioned earlier. Could you explain again? It sounded like someone's been selected to do the study, and I'm just wondering if you could talk about that a little bit more, about who that person is and about how they were selected and what the scope and expected kind of product is of the study.
Let's see. So the person that's been selected to help us with this study works for the Council of Northwest Council of Governments. Her name is Janelle Mullen. She's also a Cornwall resident and is the planner at the Council of Governments. She's also been working on implementing and revising the town planning and zoning regulations. So she is the person we're hiring to us with this state required plan. So again, there's going to be the selectmen appoint a task team, 5 to 7 people, work with your planning consultant for development of the housing plan. This is the, again, this should be from the housing, somebody from the Planning and Zoning Commission, somebody from the local housing, somebody from the Economic Development Commission, social service director, may include a local builder or realtor. So anyway, so there's a task committee, and then the COG can do a housing needs and market data assessment. Town forms a task team, or delegates the plan over to a town committee commission. The council of government reviews the housing needs and market data with the task team, begins planning online resident employer survey of housing needs. They do an online survey, possible phone interviews about needs with school principal, fire department, EMS, major employers. So it's pretty thorough, their outreach. They have some public impressions, most likely to be held by Zoom, to get feedback on housing needs, goals, and strategies. Then the planning consultant develops a draft housing plan based on surveys, interviews, and basically they're looking at needs of residents over 65 and residents under 35 who are leaving to find housing options and afford in other places. They're looking at waiting lists at existing housing developments. They're interviewing business owners. They're looking at what do we have now in town, history of our affordable housing efforts, and looking at different resources, what other towns have done, and they're coming up with an act on how do you implement all this. So again, there's a lot of local input on trying to develop some housing alternatives for people in town. So that's it.
It's also quite cool because she actually grew up in Sharon, and I think that's pretty important of having a consultant that understands the area.
Thank you for that background.
Are they the same ones who came up with the Falls Village plan?
I don't believe, I think this is fairly new. I think we are one of the few towns that are doing this particular thing. So I'm not sure what they've had, in Falls Village and where they've gotten, but this is, certainly we've had housing issues before in the town that have been successful, and there's been a lot of new work on the issue, so we're to see what we can come up with. So, any other public comments? Okay, once.
Yeah, I do.
someone mentioned the Lakeville Journal letter that I wrote. This is Carolyn Nastro about the CARES funding going to Northwest Connect. And it sort of ties in with the fiber optic issue. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about, and kind of getting really into this and researching a lot. And I find it, so it ties into our fiber. And I think there's a lot of information that Northwest Connect is giving us that's not accurate. And one of the things, I watched the COG meeting when that 48,000 CARES money was given to Northwest Connect, and it was briefly mentioned as being a broadband funding, and then it was for some, to improve broadband in Torrington. And that 148,000 of CARES money was given to Torrington to do a first level hearing study for a muni fiber network in Torrington to support Northwest Connect. This has nothing to do with improving broadband for people COVID or people even in the in the future. I mean, these muni fiber networks, if they're going to be built, won't happen for many, many years. So I wrote the letter. When I saw that in the minutes, I was just so amazed that this much money had been given to them. Also because I was I've been talking a lot with the Connecticut State Broadband Policy Office, and there is so much that we could be doing now, and this ties into be doing in Cornwall with our fiber plan. What Steve Simonin mentioned is very important too. Basically, the broadband coordinator under COVID is, because it's considered an essential service, has been able to put a lot of pressure on the cable companies right now to do the things that we need. I mean, a lot of people know that we need things done in our area, not as much in Cornwall where we're covered by Optimum, but we do have at least four houses on River Road connected. So the guy's name, Bert Cohen, is working directly with the governor right now, and they are putting pressure on the cable companies to roll out their lines to the areas that need to be out. They're actually working very hard right now in Sharon, and I have a sense that it might be imminent that Sharon, Salisbury, and Lakeville are going to get Comcast to come in and file out their lines there. And we can be doing the same things in Cornwall. Anyone who has trouble with their internet can report and do speed tests for them. We can start gathering this information in Cornwall, funneling it through all of Litchfield County, and basically identify the problems we have, like Marina was talking about, and do speed tests to show whether we are getting the speeds that we're paying for. This is broadband. We have broadband in our area, and we can improve the broadband we have without necessarily having to build an entire muni fiber network. And what the money that's been going, the $148,000 that was given to us for COVID to help with issues during COVID, was given to Northwest Connect to do nothing of the sort. And that's what I wrote about in my letter. And I think it's really important because I actually spoke to Barbara Henry in Roxbury too, and she had no idea that Northwest Connect isn't doing these immediate things that can improve broadband in our area. So I think when people talk about fiber, it's a very different thing than talking about improving broadband. And the point that Steve Simonin brought up, is that we don't need the fiber speeds. What we do need, basically nobody in our area needs more than 200 megabytes. And the broadband policy guy, when I asked him, what speeds do you think we need to do all the business we need in this area? And he said 200 megabytes is, you would be completely satisfied with that. That's what Optimum offers us. Fiber is 1,000 megabytes. So I think these things are being falsely linked. I think Northwest Connect is not in the business of connecting us to broadband. They're in the business of creating a muni fiber network. And also what's important, I think you mentioned this about how a fiber network would put pressure on the cable companies to roll out their fiber. I don't know if that's the case. They already have fiber in our area. This is another thing too. The networks don't run without fiber. I think Northwest Connect kind of creates this idea that we have no fiber in our area. We're never going to get it. We never got electricity, which I think is a really false statement to be putting forward. We already have fiber in the area. That's why we get the speeds we're getting. It goes to certain hubs. And the way you increase bandwidth is you bring more fiber to those hubs. And then if you fiber, you roll it out to businesses if they want it. It's costly, but it's available to any business who wants it right now. Fiber is. So I think we've been paying lots of money into Northwest Connect, and we've been getting false information from Northwest Connect, a lot of false information about what we need in this area. And I think a lot of people are assuming they're doing things for the benefit of our community. And I would argue that it's not necessarily so. So that's, I mean, and if you, anyway, so I've been looking a lot into it and could provide some information too. It's a complicated issue, but I just wanted to put that forward.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so.
Oh, and yeah, and sorry, one more thing, Gordon, about that. The last thing about the committee looking into the broadband for our community, the Cornwall Expansion Committee.
Yes.
I can wait if someone else has a public comment before.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the thing with this committee too, that keep pushing, is transparency, because the committee is purportedly looking into this for the benefit of our town. And this committee was formed request of Northwest Connect and the COG in a July 9th meeting to funnel communication to Northwest Connect. And so I have to be very aware that the information that they're presenting is not necessarily in the best interests of our town, but there's a sizable number, not a sizable number, there are some 4 people on the committee who represent Northwest Connect, one of whom who actually works for Northwest Connect and is the chair of the EDC. And so I think there are public meeting laws in effect that apply to any committee that is doing work on behalf, not on behalf of a town, but is doing work looking into a town issue. And the reason those public meeting laws are in effect is because they want that information to be out in the open so that people can see and understand whether the info people are studying is to benefit the town or not. And that is not happening with this committee. They're not making their information public. They're not making their minutes public. They're removing information from the minutes that are not favorable to Northwest Connect. There's a lot of stuff happening in this committee that I don't think is in the best interest of Cornwall. And so legally, they need to be following public meeting laws. And I looked into this with the state, and because studying an issue that's going to be presented to the board, whether or not it's a private group or not, and they're studying an issue that pertains to all of Cornwall, they need to be following these rules. They can't basically kind of negotiating in private. It gets into a real serious issue about people doing things and then recommending things to the town. And when it's being recommended, that it's been done openly and in the best interest of the town. So I would ask that before any report is accepted from them as a kind of an entity, a town entity of some form, whether public or private, that we look into these legal issues about whether they've been following proper procedure with regard to this.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks, if not before.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. Motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Yep, you too.
Stay well.
Thank you.